I am always moved when I hear Shirlane talk, not just about our children, our family, but when I hear her love for all the children, all the families of this city, and how she puts that into action every day. Let's thank our First Lady. Brought your cheering section with you there. I want to thank everyone for being here. This is a room full of people who care deeply about New York City, put your heart and soul into our city. I want to thank you for all you do. This is a time we gather each year to take stock and prepare for the future, but it should also be a moment of celebration and appreciation. So do me a favor, look around you, look at all the good people, look at all the people who care. Give your neighbor a round of applause. I want to thank all the wonderful people and the kids, the performers, everyone you've heard so far today. And I want to thank at the beginning the public servants who every day do so much for this city. I'm going to call out Attorney General Tish James, thank you. Secretary of State Rosanna Rosado, thank you. State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli, thank you. City Council Speaker Corey Johnson, thank you. City Comptroller Scott Stringer, thank you. To all of the members of Congress who are here, the members of the Assembly, the Senate, to our borough presidents, let's thank them, our district attorneys, let's thank them. A special thank you to my old friend Michael Miller. Thank you very much for your powerful invocation, and to someone who served New York City, serves us every day, but also served Puerto Rico so powerfully. Yocarina Duarte, thank you so much. And finally, to everyone here at the Museum of Natural History, this is truly one of the greatest places in this city. It is one of the places that makes us proud. I want to thank the President, Ellen Futter, all your team for the amazing work you do. And this is a place where we really feel the world around us. And we're going to talk about that today, the future of this city, the future of our earth. But if you ever want to stop and feel it, come right here to this museum. Thank you for being devoted to make sure we are all thinking about the future of this earth. Thank you, Ellen. Another thing we do every year is we get a moment to celebrate some extraordinary public servants who are our first responders in so many different ways. And in the program today, there's a list of wonderful people who did amazing things in 2019. I'm only going to give you a few quick examples, and then we should clap for all of them after. But first of all, from New York City Health and Hospitals, Dr. Yinan Len. She is a primary care physician at Bellevue. That would be enough in the way of great public service. But she further works to help the homeless. She's a founder, or the founder, of the Complex Care Clinic, which brings together all the things homeless folks need to help them and convince them that there's a life off the streets where they can really get what they need. And Dr. Len has been known to go out unannounced and just give out food and help and be there for homeless people. Dr. Len, thank you. Please stand. Let us thank you. From Department of Correction, and this is an example when you are a first responder and a public servant, it's not just when the uniform's on and when you've punched the clock. Our public servants are 24/7 people. Correction Officer Jehi Simple was on a train, Long Island Railroad train. It was the middle of SantaCon, always an interesting time of year. And unfortunately, someone was not in the spirit of the season, was spewing out hateful language and wielding a knife. Officer Semple was off duty. That didn't matter. He leapt to action. He restrained this individual until police could come and effectuate the arrest. Thank you, Officer Semple. Please stand. He's out there somewhere. Where are you, officer? Oh, there. As a society, we're starting to understand that there are no boundaries to who can serve, who can be a first responder. And that means we're also seeing something that we didn't used to see, which is a married couple, both of whom are serving us. Firefighter Chris Magas and EMT Patricia Magas. They, again, are the kind of people give so much every single day. A couple absolutely devoted to public service. But again, it did not end for them when they were off duty. One day, going about their business, and they hear a commotion next door. And it turns out a neighbor is in danger. In fact, neighbors had a heart attack. This is literally a life and death moment. That neighbor was a retired NYPD sergeant. The Magas knew exactly what to do. They jumped into action immediately. They were in the right place at the right time, and they saved the life of a fellow first responder. Let's thank them. Wherever you are. There they go. All right. Thank you. Rabbi Miller spoke powerfully about the challenge we face in recent months with this horrible uptick in hate and anti-Semitism. And one of the most terrifying moments was that night during Hanukkah, a night you should never expect hate to rear its head, when there was an attack in Muncie. And the attacker fled. There was a moment of doubt. Was this individual going to get away? Were there others in danger? Well, it turned out the suspect drove down to the city to West 144th Street. Our officers had been alerted. And we should all count our blessings in this city that two smart, able, quick-witted officers immediately did the exact right thing and stopped someone who could have harmed so many others before he could ever get out of his car. Let us thank Officer David Radziwan and Officer Russell Matera. Officers, the word hero gets used too much sometimes, but what you did was heroic. What you did was so important for this city. And for everyone out there who wondered if hate could be stopped, you proved it can be stopped in New York City. Thank you. Finally, every story is powerful and moving, but I cannot tell a lie. This one, as a New Yorker, this one moved me to my core. Sanitation worker Timothy Moore. A normal day on the job, moving a truck, going over the Verrazano Bridge. Nothing unusual until he sees a woman standing by the railing of the bridge. Stops his truck immediately, gets out, goes up to her, tries to see if she's okay, tries to make sure that nothing wrong is happening. The woman resists, confronts him, starts swinging at him. This, dear friends, is a quote from our good sanitation worker, Timothy Moore. He said to her, "If you want to fight, that's okay, but you are not jumping off this bridge." Let's thank Timothy Moore. I left out the punchline. He held her until police officers came, saved her life. Thank you. Timothy Moore, well done, brother. So, let me state the obvious here. This is not your typical state of the city. It looks different, obviously. It's a different approach because it's time to have a different kind of dialogue. Typically, a state of the city is a laundry list of accomplishments. Typically, there is a very set script. Usually, a state of the city does not occur next to a 94-foot whale. I've checked the facts, it's very rare. And honestly, usually a state of the city, or state of anything, is a lot of it's happy talk, a lot of it's euphemism. And I really felt at this moment, after 6 years on this job, working with so many of you in every neighborhood of the city, I felt it was time for something different. It was time to be blunt about what's going on in this city. It was time for some real talk. I am going to say, for balance, and I feel this in my heart, there's plenty of good news. There's plenty of good news. And it's not minor stuff, it's real stuff. We have arguably the strongest economy we've ever had. We're a global economic power. We have added 500,000 new jobs in the last 6 years. And thanks to so many people in this room, we are the safest big city in America, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But honestly, we know those things. We don't need to repeat those things and get deep into that. What we need to talk about is what I hear about every town hall meeting I go to, every conversation I have, more and more turns to the same problem. And I have to say, and Rabbi Miller mentioned this, there is a particular fear out there, a particular anxiety. And the way I say it is, people are afraid that New York City won't be New York City anymore. They're afraid that our heart and soul could slip away. I feel this anxiety everywhere I go, and when my people are anxious, I'm anxious too. When my people are worried, I'm worried too. We have to come to grips with the fact that this is a different kind of problem. We've literally never experienced before on this scale, with this intensity. Years ago, I talked about needing to make sure this was a city for everyone. And it felt like if we did a lot of the right things, that things would come together, we would make it work. But we are facing challenges, we are facing forces that we've never, ever experienced with this kind of intensity before. Now, you could easily make a parallel to what this city went through in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, when people were leaving in droves, when there was plenty of fear and anxiety, when people felt they had to go. But today, here's what's strange. No one wants to leave, but they are being forced out. Or if they haven't been displaced yet, it's a constant fear. We used to worry about crime all the time, all the time. It was an obsession because it was so real. But the challenge now is not crime, the challenge now is greed. Greed afflicting all of us, greed that would take away this city from its own people. Our challenge, our enemy in this struggle, is an economic one. It's not that we have to fear street thugs, it's that we have to fear bad landlords. That's the reality. It's a different city with a different dynamic, and we have to come to grips with it. I'm going to ask all of you, for what you've experienced. In your own neighborhood, is there a cherished small business, a mom and pop store that you have seen close that you wish was still there? Raise your hand. Okay, just so we can get the power of what's happening out, everyone say the name of that store you miss. Just say it out loud all at once. Say the name of that store you miss. Louder. Everyone has their own example. How many of you have gone by one of those signs at a building site advertising a condo for $2 million or $3 million or $4 million or $5 million, and it has been disgusting to you? Raise your hand if you have had that experience. If you have felt that is not meant for me and my family or anyone I know. How many of you fear that this generation of your family might be the last generation to be able to afford to live in New York City? Right? That's what's really going on, right? And we have to confront it. And I want to be clear, you can talk about an affordability crisis, but that doesn't even capture the depth of it. We've been talking about an affordability crisis for years, and we thought the tools we would apply would work. And they've had an effect, but I got to tell you, more and more, this feels like one of those diseases that becomes resistant to antibiotics, where you apply the medicine and it works less and less. We honestly believed, we put forward first an affordable housing plan, the biggest in the history of the city, 200,000 apartments. The need was so great, we made it 300,000 apartments, and it's not enough. We passed the strongest legislation in the country, and I want to thank the City Council. Mandatory inclusionary housing, requiring developers to create affordable housing if they got a permit to build. The strongest in the country. It's not enough. We did 2 rent freezes. They had never been done in the history of New York City that reached millions of people. Not enough. We gave free lawyers to stop evictions, and they have. We went to Albany, fought for the $15 minimum wage so people have more money in their pockets. They got it. We went to Albany, fought for stronger rent laws to protect our tenants. We got it. You'd think if you did all those things, the problem might be solved. But here's what's clear. We have to go a lot farther. We have to go a lot farther. Today, I'm presenting to you something very different. This is a plan to save our city. And I thought long and hard about whether those words were called for, but I am convinced they are. We need a plan to save our city because that's where we are right now. We're at a point where we have to be saved. This city and everything it stands for must be saved, and we are the ones who have to save ourselves. We have to save ourselves from the forces of greed. We have to save ourselves from laws that no longer serve us. And by the way, because we're in this place, we have to save ourselves from an existential threat facing New York City and facing everywhere in the world. So this is a plan to take us forward. Are you ready to help us save our city? Vamos a salvar nuestra ciudad. The notion of this plan is to return this city to you, because this is your city. Esta ciudad es tu ciudad. You know that classic song, "This Land Is Your Land"? That's what we used to feel about New York City. We need to feel it again. We need to know this is our place, every one of us, every kind of New Yorker, which means we need to do things we have never done before. It means we need to think differently, we need to act differently, and we need to dream differently. We need to envision changes that for so long have been off the table. I'm going to state the obvious, doing these things won't be easy. Anything worth doing comes with opposition. Some of these ideas will come with a whole lot of opposition. But do not mistake what I'm saying as a reason for people to be fearful, a reason for people to shrink away from the challenge. This is not a time to fear, this is a time to fight. And New Yorkers know how to fight, right? We have 2 years of urgent work ahead of us. And I want it to be very clear, this is a very ambitious agenda. It's going to take a lot of work. I'm going to devote myself for these 2 years to getting all of these things done. And I need your help. Everyone in this room, I need your help to make these changes. And I say that with a sense of urgency. But I also say it with a sense of hope. The good news for me, after 6 years of working with all of you, is seeing that, in fact, a lot of things can change. A lot of things we were told would never be achieved have been achieved. I remember vividly, over these last 6 years, I remember it all very clearly. I remember all the voices that said it was impossible to give pre-K to every one of our children. We proved them wrong, didn't we? I remember when we were fighting for paid sick leave and we were told the economy would crash and we'd lose jobs, but we proved them wrong, didn't we? And Lord knows I remember when we said that a broken and unconstitutional and discriminatory policy of stop and frisk had to end. I heard so many voices say it would lead to crime and chaos and take us back in time. Brothers and sisters, we proved those doubters wrong. We proved that we could continue to become a safer and safer city, that fairness and safety could walk hand in hand. We did that. So we have to remember that whatever you attempt to do, if it's different, people will try to talk you out of it. People will always try and talk you out of your own power. But we have proven, all of us, what we are capable of. And now it's time to, once again, take up the challenge. It's time to go farther. It's time to take ideas that will work for this moment in history. And those ideas, by the way, came from so many of you. So many people who spoke up at town hall meetings. So many folks who came to City Hall or I met on a street corner said something needs to be different. Today, we're going to talk about 5 strategies to save this city we love. And these strategies came, in so many cases, from the people, from the neighborhoods. And they're going to make a huge difference for us. To start, I want to talk about our young people, because we do need to save our young people. We do need to save our young people. We need to do it to keep our city safe, but we also need to do it because our young people are dealing with challenges we could not have imagined when we were growing up. And we owe it to them to embrace them and help them forward in an ever more complex society. This video will give you one part of the story.
So this is our catchment area, or what we call our hot zone in this particular precinct. So we started in 2014. When I first started doing this work, I was by myself. Back then, this school was top 3 most violent middle schools in New York City. Recruiting, bullying, extortion, things of that nature. Individuals that recruit young people into these violent street organizations, they are also out here standing. Gang members, when I was one, we were looking for vulnerable youth. We would watch to see if someone was picking them up, and if no one was and they were walking along by themselves, we walk side by side with them, and then that's how they get pulled in. We at BRAC provide safe passage for them to the train station, to the bus stops, maybe even go all the way home with them. These are our streets too, and we're going to take them back.
David Kaba, you saw him in this video. He works with the Cure Violence organization, BRAG, and Good Shepherd Services, and we're going to brag on them in a minute. I met David a few weeks ago at a meeting, and he said something that just gripped me immediately. He said when he was growing up in the 70s that kids had to band together for their own protection as young as second grade. And that he went through a lot of tough times and a lot of things that might have discouraged someone, but that he found the resolve in him to believe that it did not have to be that way. So that school you saw in the video, that school used to be a place where at the end of school, gang recruiters would be right outside the school waiting for the kids. They were going to intimidate them, bully them, recruit them, but that block in front of the school belonged to the gangs. And David Kaba said, we need to change that. And one day he put himself right in front of that school and started telling those gang members to back off. And he could speak to them as someone who had been through his own experiences, had lived that same life. And David Kaba stood in front of that school, and then one day a second person stood with him, and a third person stood with him another day, and a fourth person, and a fifth person, and not so long after that, that block belonged to the people again and not the gangs. Let's thank David Kaba. Where are you, David? There you go. David is an amazing example of the Cure Violence movement. Everyone from Cure Violence movement, if you're here, stand up. Anyone in Cure Violence? Where are you? Thank you. Thank you. Neighborhood people standing up against crime, reaching out to our young people, offering them a better way. I want to be clear how powerful this is. Neighborhood people making a difference in their own neighborhoods. We have people all over the city helping to address violence and reach our young people. We have the finest police force anywhere on the earth. What does that mean? It means we are never going back to those days where violence and crime grip this city. We are never going back. But what's so powerful is today we understand that one of the best ways to secure our future is to connect with our young people, to communicate with them, to figure out what they need, to hear them. Our young people do not need to be policed, they need to be reached. And don't misunderstand that sentence. I believe in what the NYPD does every day. But this is about getting to that young person before they ever might commit a crime. This is about going to the root cause. And for years, in the time of stop and frisk, our young people were treated like they were the problem. What did that broken policy of stop and frisk do? It degraded our young men and women of color. It treated them like they were criminals. It took away their value. But here's the beautiful thing. The NYPD today is doing the polar opposite. The NYPD today has announced a new youth strategy, focusing the most powerful and effective police force anywhere on the globe on the work of healing, communicating, inspiring our young people to never even think of a life of crime, but to only believe in themselves. So here's what we're going to do. That youth strategy, that means over 300 officers will be youth coordination officers. Imagine this. They have that uniform on, they have that badge, they have that gun. That's true. And what are they thinking about every day? They're thinking about how to reach young people who might be teetering on that edge. How to help a family that's struggling but doesn't know where to turn. How to make sure if a kid's starting to get in trouble that it stops right there. using all the power and intellect of the NYPD to move our young people in the right direction, stopping crime before it even happens. I want to say, and this is a reason I'm very proud of this man, this was from the heart and soul of Dermot Shea. Thank you, Commissioner Shea. Thank you to NYPD. Well, I'm pointing in the wrong direction. There he is. Thank you. So that's the first point. The second point, community centers. We need more places that are safe and positive for our young people. I have heard this at town hall meetings all over this city. So, dozens and dozens of our parks, recreation centers, we're going to open them up more hours, more days, and for young adults, we're going to make their memberships free. So they can go there and have that safe place to be. Turns out we have 6 community centers in NYCHA and the Parks Department that are sitting there dormant, that have been shuttered. We got to open them up for our young people. We will. Wherever I've gone, I've had people say our community doesn't have a place for young people. And so we looked around the city where some of the need is greatest, where there are not those youth centers. And we're going to build 7 new ones in Soundview, in Tremont, in the Bronx, Coney Island, Bushwick, in Brooklyn, Queens Village, and Astoria, in Queens, and the South Shore of Staten Island. At town hall meetings, people said to me with exasperation, our schools don't have a stop sign next to them where the kids are coming to school. There's not a stoplight, there's not a stop sign. How are we going to protect our kids if we don't even have the basics? Today we announced that every school in New York City doesn't have a stoplight or a stop sign is about to get one. 1,000 new stop signs, stoplights, speed bumps for our schools and neighborhoods that need them. And everyone knows, and we're talking about safety, we're talking about young people, but we're also talking about Vision Zero. Because one of the things that's changed in this city is making Vision Zero just as much of a part of the conversation of safety as everything we talk about when we talk about policing. NYPD has been right there with this every step of the way. And now we announce a new Vision Zero unit within the NYPD, over 100 officers that will make sure our streets are safer for our pedestrians, our cyclists, and our motorists alike. So, I will say to you, this is an example. Even with the challenges we face, even with the things that we're going to have to overcome, there's so much to appreciate in how far we've come as a city, how much safer we are, and how this city is now creating new strategies that will make us safer for the long haul and reach our young people in ways we never did before. All of that, a decade, 2 decades ago, if you had talked about these kind of things, people would have laughed you out of the room. But now we've proven that we can do amazing things in this city. And I'm going to give you another example. I remember, and it pained me for years and years, all of the nasty things, the really discouraging things people used to say about New York City public schools. There were things said about our public schools, about our kids, about our teachers for decades that suggested nothing but failure, nowhere to go, no chance of ever getting better. It was never true then, and it's much less true now. And we're going to prove that all those naysayers were wrong. Take a look at this.
Taught in the toughest high schools in New York City.
Why don't you sit down?
I can't sit down. I'm dropping out.
You take most of these schools and put them together, and what have you got? One big, fat, overflowing garbage can.
So what looks true to you? Raise your hand if those images you saw towards the end are the New York City public schools that you know and love. Right? That's the truth. I had an experience in the first year I was mayor. Everyone knows we put everything we had into starting pre-K, and everyone knows that it was by the skin of our teeth that we actually got it up and running by that September. And I remember one of the first classrooms I went to with Chancellor Farina, we were reading to kids in this classroom. We were reading the book, Very Hungry Caterpillar, childhood favorite. And the kids were totally into it. They were calling out the numbers and the animals and the colors, and everything was going great, except this one kid in the back just would not engage. Didn't seem to care in the least. So we finished reading the story. Lots of media were there. Lots of people were paying attention. You know, it felt good, but I was really bugged that this one kid just didn't seem to care. And I'm about to leave, and the kid shoots up his hand. I'm like, okay, let's see what you got. So this is, remember, the Very Hungry Caterpillar, about a caterpillar turns into a butterfly. That's what the book is about. So I call on this kid, and he looks at me very seriously, and he says, metamorphosis. I have this on video. I am not making this up. And he is with us here today, William Alamini, PS 239. Where are you, William? Stand up. There you go, right there. Right there. Wave your hand, William. Wave your hand.